Good morning, it's Valerie Ling. Hi, how you going? I finished a couple of hours of clinical consults and wanting to share with you some of my reflections that have come through from the clinical conversations I've been having today, this morning, and also I think what I myself have been anticipating in my own space. I want to just chat with you about shifting and being flexible and adaptable while other people may not be quite so willing to move as well. What I mean by this is that in the current environment, in the current climate, when you've had to make some decisions, particularly if you're leading a team, and you've had to make decisions and you're trying to get back to a sense of normal, business as usual and trying to forecast, I want to just suggest that some of the variables that we are looking at and some of the variables that the people that we are working with and looking at probably have shifted and moved in very different ways, right? There's a nice seat there. I wonder if it's wet. I might go and sit there. So, what I mean by this is when we are trying to get back to business as usual, we may have embraced and embodied some changes in the environment that other people have not yet realized and may be trying to get back to the old normal. Here's the thing, the old normal doesn't exist anymore, it just doesn't. And we may need to bring our team and the people around us through a journey to help them to connect the dots for themselves as to what do you mean when you say the old normal doesn't exist anymore. Let me give you a really concrete example. You may have realized that the way that you were doing business or the way that you were functioning as a team or as an organization, there were some bits that weren't working, or worse, there were some things that were actually completely misaligned with what you think is a quality service, right? You may have discovered that you don't want to go back to that point. You can see it clearly. You've probably needed to take a high level view to figure out all the different functions that are happening in your organization or in your team. So in my business, there are 6 pillars that we keep our eye on. It's not just service delivery in terms of clinical services. There's the human resources component. That's the operations side of it, the admin side. There's the executive functions of finance and legal and HR. And you may have had to relook all of those areas, and you may have spotted some ways that in this environment you've had to shift things. For example, you might have had to very speedily digitize some things. You may have had to let go of some stuff. You may have had to outsource some things. Or if you're in a situation where your business has struggled, and all of us, our businesses have struggled, you may have had to trim off those things and shut down some components. And the thing is, you've possibly spent a lot of time looking at those high level dimensions that other people haven't necessarily been a part of, because understandably, our eyes have been on the ground trying to figure out the schooling from home bit, trying to figure out the working from home bit, trying to figure out just how to do the Zoom bit. Why isn't it working? So the technical side of things, right? So there's always 3 levels I guess 3 levels of influence in an organization. There's going to be leadership, there's going to be management, and there's going to be the technical elements of it. Now, when we are coming back as groups and trying to forecast the new normal, we're all going to be looking at those 3 levels very differently based on our experiences and based on our priorities and based on our roles. So it's actually really, really important not to assume that business as usual means that it is also in the same environment. If you're at the technician level, if you're on the ground, as leaders, we need to hear what our people have experienced. They're going to want to give us some feedback as some of the things that haven't worked quite so well, that from a technician point of view, they hadn't realized just how much of a burden that was before. we're going to need to listen to that. We're going to need to rebuild some of the technician experiences. So for me, my business is a psychology practice. I'm probably going to need to re-listen to things that my psychologists or my team have experienced during the COVID-19 situation where they've had to flex, and we might need to rebuild some of their feedback and some of their experiences back into the technical environment. If you are managing others, you are going to want to think about how much your role has shifted when you are having to deal with complaints and criticisms and feedback and customer issues and inefficiencies in the way things are done. Our biggest headache was not the technical stuff, was FPOS machines. How do you actually do reconciliation? How do you actually do financing? And how do you not aggravate, from a management perspective, people who are trying to do their best, but it's our system that hasn't been able to keep up with the change. And then from a leadership perspective, when we look at all of those facets, we may actually have spent a lot of time down on the ground, and we need to get back up, or we've been maybe a little too stressed and anxious and cranky, and we've been micromanaging at the management level. We need to get back up to the leadership level and have a look and see how all those functions are going. But I betcha you're exhausted. The last thing you want to hear is another complaint from either technical or management level. The last thing you want to hear is another way of, I think we should do it this way, it looks different. You're going to want to get back and say business as usual, just let me get on with what I need to get on with, because we've been in survival mode and it would be really nice just to coast and flow at the moment. However, you're going to need to regroup and rest and go and do some stuff that fills your tank, because you've got to bring all those different levels in your organization with you back so that everybody is seeing the same picture, embracing the different experiences they've had, embracing some of the new thinking that we have, and not in our attempt to manage our anxiety at all those three levels to just rubber band back to let's just do it this way. It worked before, why shouldn't it work now? That's just some of my reflections from some of the conversations I've had today, and also just reflecting on the space that I'm at the moment. Okay, take care.